Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. Greetings to Rika Andayani as my lecturer in listening for general communication and everyone who watched my presentation. Today I will present the results of my analysis from the news that I watched for fulfilling my final term examination project. Before I start my presentation, I will first show the news video that I am analyzing.
What happens when your dream home turns into a real-life nightmare? That's the creepy story told in the new hit Netflix series called The Watcher, and it's based on a true story. In 2014, Derek Broadus, an insurance executive, and his wife Maria bought this $1.3 million six-bedroom home in the suburb of Westfield, New Jersey. Bought it for themselves and their three kids. In the series, they're called Dean and Nora Braddock and played by Bobby Cannavale and Naomi Watts. After beginning renovations, the couple began receiving creepy letters from an anonymous person calling him or herself the Watcher, and claimed to have been watching the house for years as their father and grandfather had before them. Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? I will find out. More letters followed. The writer showed familiarity with the family's children, referred to them as young blood, and threatened, quote, "Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me." The family reported the letters to the local police. They hired a private investigator, but to this day, they have never learned who sent them. The Watcher, based on a story published by my next guest, Reeves Weideman, in New York Magazine in 2018. He recently revisited the case in a piece called Taking Another Look at the Watcher, What We Know About the Case 4 Years Later. Reeves joins me now. He's a features writer at New York Magazine. So how many letters in total and over what time period?
The Broadus family received basically 3 letters sort of within the first roughly 6 weeks after buying the house. Beyond that, we know that there was one other letter that had gone to the house shortly before they bought it, and one other letter that they received then 3 years later when the house was sort of embroiled in some more local controversy.
And Reeves, I know from your great piece, they bought the house not knowing that the former owner had received one similar letter. Was there any obligation on the part of that seller to disclose it?
No, there wasn't. I mean, this is one of those things where it's sort of in a gray area, and there's no legal requirement to report something like getting kind of an unusual letter. And the people who sold the house said that, the letter they received was kind of odd and strange, but wasn't the same kind of threatening letter that the Broaduses received. And they say they just sort of, it was weird, but they threw it away.
I get that it was 8 years ago. I would think that if it happened today, there's so many cameras all over the place and, Ring doorbells. No video, no DNA gave the cops anything to go on here?
Well, there wasn't any video. I mean, these were sent through the mail, so this wasn't something that someone came up and dropped it off. Eventually, investigators did actually put cameras at the local post office to try to see if they could see anyone coming to drop anything off, but that didn't lead anywhere. The one piece of forensic evidence we have is there is a DNA sample from one of the envelopes. It's from saliva that was used to lick the envelope shut. And the only thing that we know is that the DNA was apparently from a woman. So it seems that at least the person who licked that envelope closed was apparently a woman.
Is it an active investigation? Are the Westfield cops still on this?
Not really. I mean, there was a certain point at which this got escalated to the county prosecutor's office, and it's now been, as you said, 8 years since the case came out, sort of 4 years since our story came out and kind of re-energized the investigation again. I've been told that short of more evidence or a really promising lead, the police haven't closed the case, but they also aren't actively investigating it at this point.
Again, I know from your reporting on the real story, because a lot of liberties are taken by Netflix in telling it, I get that. They really never moved into the property. They were engaged in renovations, and they had the crap scared out of them, and I guess so too their kids, so they didn't move in. I have to believe when they finally were able to sell the house, and that's a struggle, but when they finally go to another property, I'll bet they wondered, uh-oh, I hope we're not going to get a letter here too. You know, like maybe it's something about us. Were there any letters ever sent to the Broaddus family? Did any letters go to whomever did buy the house, or did it end?
Yeah, that was obviously a concern, but there haven't been. They haven't gotten letters at their new home, and the new owners also haven't gotten any letters. So whoever was doing this, it does seem that they've stopped for whatever reason, whether that's all the attention that's come to this case and not wanting to be caught, or realizing kind of how awful this was that they had done this. Whatever
Or
reason
they're
it is, it
dead.
seems like they've stopped. What's that?
Or they're
Or they're
dead.
dead. You know, it's also possible. I mean, that's also certainly a possibility.
I know many of us are caught up in the Netflix version. I encourage everybody to simply Google and access your piece, because the real story is fascinating. Thank you for your willingness to come here and tell it.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
So that's the news video that I analyzed. Next, we will move to the presentation. Before I start my presentation, let me introduce myself. My name is Rima Kaila Salsabila from class 22B, majoring in English language education. I will present the results of my analysis from the video that I showed earlier. Let's start with the identity of the news. The title is Family Buys $1.3 million home and then starts getting creepy letters. This news was uploaded to YouTube on October 22, 2022 on the CNN channel. Next, there are the results of my analysis. First, the main topic of this news is how the real-life watcher stalked the Broaddus family by sending them anonymous threatening letters. The theme of this news is entertainment because the main topic is adapted to the Netflix series The Watcher, and the second is mystery because the main topic turns into unsolved case until this time. Next is the setting of the place and the figures. The first was a CNN presenter named Michael Smerconis, who broke the news from the CNN studio. The second is a New York Magazine writer and author of the article about the Watcher, named Reeves Wiedemann, who answers questions from the presenter in his own home. They use conference meetings as a medium of communication. Next, there is audience. The target audience for this news is the general public, especially those who like mysteries and those who want to know the true story of the series The Watcher after watching it or are just curious. And then the news focus on the details of the horrific incident that happened to the Broaddus family until it became an unsolved case to this day. And then the audience expectation from this news is that the audience and the Westfall cops can find out the truth of the Broaddus family case being stalked by the watcher and get threatening letters from him or her. Next, there are language features. I found many language features from the news that I analyzed. Every sentence that I bold shows each of the language features that appear in the news. The first one, the news use present perfect tense for the example, but to this day they have never learned who sent them. Next, the news use simple past tense. For the example, the family report the letters to the local police. They hired a private private investigator. Next, the news use past progressive tense for the example, so whoever was doing this. Next, the news use past perfect tense for the example, there was one other letter that had gone to the house. The former owner had received one similar letter. Next, the news use simple future tense. For the example, I will find out, I will call to them and draw them to me. Next, the news use saying verbs. For the example, the people who sold the house said that the letter they received was kind of odd and strange. I've been told that short of more evidence or a really promising lead. Next, the news use action verbs. For the example, Maria bought this $1.36 million home in the suburb of Westwall, New Jersey. The letter they received was kind of odd and strange. Next, the news use adverbs of time. For the example, in 2014, Derek wrote this. I get that it was 8 years ago. Next, and the last one, this news use adverbs of place. For the example, and his wife Maria bought this $1.36 million home in the suburb of Westfield, New Jersey. And finally, there is conclusion. The conclusion that I can draw from the results of my analysis is that CNN presents news about how the real-life watchers stalk the Gratis family by sending them anonymous threatening letters. The story was adapted into the Netflix series The Watchers. CNN presenter Michael Smerconis asks Reeves Wideman a few questions about what he knew after revisiting the case. In the end, the Brothers family eventually sold the house, moved to the another property, and never got the creepy letters again. But the case has not been solved so far. We hope Westfall Police solve this case as soon as possible so that this incident does not happen again in the future. So that's all from my presentation. I apologize if there are words that are not pleasing. I apologize too if I say the words incorrectly. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. See you next time. Bye.